You might often feel like you are observing the world from the outside. This quiet sense of distance perfectly captures how deep thinkers learn differently than everyone else. It happens almost every single time you encounter new information. While most people grab the easiest explanation, your mind completely refuses to take that route. They immediately jump to a fast, confident conclusion. But your brain cannot do that. It is not because you are confused. The truth is quite the opposite. Your brain instantly builds a massive web of variables. It pulls up rare exceptions. It checks the historical context. You look straight through the surface. You immediately spot how the popular, simple answer is fundamentally flawed. You see that it only works if several other complex conditions are perfectly met. Your brain demands time to actively organize all of this information. Because of this, you naturally pause. You sit quietly while the rest of the world just rushes forward. This constant internal delay can bring up a very strange mix of emotions. You might feel slow. You might feel isolated. Yet deep down, you also feel profoundly aware. Most people look at this hesitation and judge it. They usually call it overthinking. Our society absolutely loves speed. We tend to associate raw intelligence with rapid-fire certainty. People expect quick replies. If you take too long to process a thought, people might judge you. You might ask a question that makes a simple idea much more complicated. If you do, you might be told you are spending way too much time in your own head. Over time, you absorb these comments. You might think that your mind is somehow broken or inefficient, but it isn't. This quiet, consuming delay is actually the signature of a completely different psychological design. You do not just think differently than other people. You actually learn in a completely different way. You need to understand the hidden logic of your own mind. Because this understanding explains why being you can sometimes feel so incredibly exhausting. A deep thinker isn't defined by just one simple standard trait. It is actually a complex mix of different mental habits. It involves how you are motivated to think and how you monitor your own mind. The real foundation of this psychological profile has a specific name. Researchers call it the need for cognition. This means you have a deep internal drive to engage in heavy mental effort and actually enjoy it. This need for cognition is a unique thing. It is not the exact same thing as raw intelligence or your IQ score. It does not just measure how fast your brain processes data. Instead, it is about where you naturally choose to invest your mental energy. You are driven by a deep hunger. You crave structure and deep meaning. This specific trait is exactly why you learn differently. For a lot of people, learning is mostly about sheer exposure. They memorize basic facts just long enough to pass a test. Your brain does not work this way. For you, remembering something depends entirely on how deeply you process it. You store information in your brain based on its deeper meaning. You are constantly building mental models and creating complex structures in your head. You ask why and how, never satisfied with just knowing what. You are naturally drawn toward specific learning habits. Educational experts call these habits self-explanation and deep questioning. This simply means you constantly quiz yourself in your head. You hear a brand new idea. Then you instantly ask what might conflict with it. You actively look for real-world examples to test the new idea and wonder what basic assumptions might be failing. Because of all this extra work, you might seem to learn slowly at first. But this slowness happens only because you demand to understand the actual foundation first. This deep need explains a lot of your frustration. It is why standard schools can feel so incredibly stifling to you. Traditional education often focuses on shallow exposure and rewards quick testing. But deep thinkers do not learn that way. You naturally test your understanding inside your head. You do this to ensure your knowledge holds up in many different situations. Your mind demands that you map out how different ideas connect to one another. This is why visual learning tools like concept maps work incredibly well for people with your exact mental profile. Because you focus on how things relate, you can eventually apply your knowledge to entirely new problems. This makes you exceptionally good at handling messy situations and complex tasks. This intense drive for depth requires amazing teamwork inside your brain. You have the ability to create complex ideas. This ability relies on a very delicate partnership between two very different networks inside your brain. The first is called the default mode network. The second is called the executive control network. The default mode network handles your deeper sense of self. It pulls up your personal memories, pieces together deep meanings from your life. It creates spontaneous, wandering thoughts. It takes over when you are trying to connect the dots. The executive control network acts more like a strict manager. It relies heavily on the front parts of your brain to monitor your ideas. It evaluates them carefully and works to strictly control those wild, wandering thoughts. Imagine what happens when you are deep in thought. You're essentially switching back and forth between these two modes. First, you explore ideas freely, and then you strictly refine those ideas. You generate many different options in your head and carefully judge each one of them. This back and forth process is incredibly tiring and requires a very powerful working memory. You keep multiple ideas active in your mind and balance contradicting facts all at the exact same time. But thinking really hard does not automatically mean you are learning perfectly. Deep thinking is only healthy when it includes accurate self-awareness. This is where a psychological concept called metacognition comes in. Metacognition is basically your ability to think about your own thinking. It is the quiet internal watcher inside your head. It tells you if you actually understand a topic or if you are just spinning your wheels. Specific front-facing regions in your brain track how uncertain you feel about any given decision. Meanwhile, other front areas step in to help you revise your choices when you realize you might be completely wrong. A true deep thinker can clearly sense their own uncertainty. By doing this, they know exactly when it is time to change their mind. This brings us to one of the most beautiful traits of a reflective mind: intellectual humility. This term means you are completely willing to admit your own limits. You easily accept the real chance that your beliefs might be incomplete or totally wrong. This humble trait is closely linked to openness, deep curiosity, and a deep comfort with the great unknown. Because of this, you rarely speak with loud, unearned confidence. You might seem hesitant to the people around you, but that hesitation is actually a rigorous error correction system running constantly in real time inside your head. Now, healthy and deep reflection is driven by genuine curiosity and a real desire to solve problems. But what about its exact opposite? Rumination? It is a dark trap that is highly repetitive, intensely negative, and completely focused on feeling threatened. In this state, you loop endlessly through the causes of your pain without ever taking action to actually fix the problem. When a highly reflective mind faces high stress, the brain's default mode network spirals out of control. Your gift for deep processing turns completely unhealthy. You shift away from fact-based reflection. You fall into unfair comparisons and negative mental loops. This repetitive negative thinking is a massive risk factor strongly linked to clinical depression and anxiety. Decision paralysis is also deeply real for someone who thinks deeply. But choice overload only happens under very specific conditions. When the choices are extremely complex, when your preferences are uncertain, or when the end goal is blurry. It is not the deep analysis itself that harms you. The harm comes from analyzing without any clear boundaries or rules for when to stop thinking. Overthinking retains the potency of brilliant insight, but it loses its healthy flexibility. That's the tragedy. Furthermore, being a deep thinker is not a magic ticket to conventional success. Consider the personality trait called conscientiousness. In typical schools and workplaces, it is actually a much stronger predictor of good grades. Conscientiousness is about discipline and finishing what you start. Openness is the trait most tied to deep curiosity and is a classic sign of a true deep learner. But without discipline, a deep thinker might spend hours researching a fascinating side topic and completely forget the actual assignment. You can be profoundly smart and still struggle in rigid systems. Learning differently does not mean you are doing it wrong. Your silence in that crowded room is not a lack of raw intelligence. It is the quiet, powerful presence of intellectual humility. Your need to pull back and process everything is not a character flaw. It is just your brain seeking the quiet it desperately needs. It needs this quiet to organize the massive amount of data you absorb every single day. The goal is not to stop thinking deeply. The goal is to build safe, sturdy walls around your beautiful, relentless mind. You must learn to leave some questions completely unanswered. Notice when you slip into the dark loop of rumination, then gently guide yourself back to safety. You do not have to match the fast pace of the people around you. In a rushed world, your ability to sit quietly with complicated, difficult things is never a weakness. It is a profound and rare form of courage. If this perspective feels true to your personal experience, consider subscribing to the channel. Thank you for listening, and please, always remember to take care of your mind.